can you do today? You know, like, can you do today without reaching out in desperation for worth and value? Can you do today?
What's up, everyone? You're listening to the Do Hard Things podcast by Elite SRS. The purpose of this show is to share stories of hardship and victory as an encouragement for those in the middle of their own hard thing. Because we know hardship produces perseverance, which produces character, which ultimately produces hope. All right, we've got our next episode of the Do Hard Things podcast, and this one's pretty special because it's my wife, Rachael Cox, and I probably am going to know most of the answers to her questions, but that's okay because she may surprise me, who knows, and either way, she has quite the story, and I'm excited for everybody to hear it, but I don't need to introduce you too much. I'll let you do that. So, and the question I ask everybody when I ask them to introduce themselves is, when people ask you what you do, how do you answer them?
Well, thank you for having me on.
Of course.
I would answer that question that I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4, and that's about what I do every day.
What does it look like to stay at home with your kids? Like, open the door, let somebody in. They're a fly on the wall.
It's very busy. It's a very busy life. I feel like, especially because our kids are so young, I'm busy all the time, changing diapers and just a lot of like teaching. And I feel like there's just a lot of opportunities to teach them the skills of living in society and living in the world and being a good friend. And a lot of it's also just changing diapers and really busy feeding the baby. And yeah, I feel like I know actually that I don't sit down very often.
Unless it's nap time.
Yeah, nap time is my time.
Talk about, because being a mom, full-time, stay at home, isn't as popular or as common as it used to be. It probably depends on where you live, like to some degree. If you're in a big city, probably less so than in like the middle of the country maybe, or in the South where like some more traditional values are kind of still prominent. We're kind of in that middle ground here. But like, talk about why and how important it is for you to like do that. And I'm not asking like for us together, but you individually, because that was something that you had a desire for even before, we met and talked. So where did that come from? Why is it important? Like, why have you chosen to do it?
Well, first, it probably came from my mom, because I remember as a young child, my mom was really involved in my childhood. She would, volunteer in my classes, and I just felt like she was always around, and that was really important to me. And I think those are some of my fondest memories. Like, I wish I could go back to that time a lot because I felt so close to my mom, and that was really valuable. And then my mom started working, and just for me, that was really hard. Even as like an adolescent, that was a really hard adjustment for me. And I was really emotional, like every time she went to work, I remember. And so I think that's probably where it starts, is my childhood and seeing how important it was that I had my mom with me. And I was really bonded to her.
Did she go to work before you went to school? Like, did she leave before you left?
So I'm learning new things. I'm not actually sure, because I do know I went to a daycare. So I guess she must have gone places at some times. I don't know how much of the daycare I went to or how long. Like, I think it was just 2 years, and I don't know how many days a week, which I didn't realize that necessarily happened until recently. But she did stay home probably till I was in like 6th grade. So from like kindergarten to 6th grade, I don't remember her not being home.
So that was the first thing. What else compelled you to be a mom?
I went to college thinking I was going to be like, go into business. My dad had always told me, get a business degree. That's where you make the most money. Like, you have the most opportunity with a business degree. And I didn't know anything about business. And I honestly didn't know anything about myself. Obviously, like most people, probably.
Classic
going into college.
Student, yeah.
And so I didn't really know what I liked. I mean, a lot of people know what they like, but I didn't know what I liked going into college. And so I tried out like hotel management and realized like within a year that that's not what I wanted to do. But I was in the business realm, and so I was trying to figure out in the business realm what I wanted to do because that's where you made the money. And that was my
be practical.
Yeah, that was my drive. So yeah, I ended up getting a marketing degree from UW, and my senior year of that degree, I kind of had like a shift in all life things. And one big shift was just thinking about like, why am I doing this? Like, what do I want? And what do I care about? And I had been a nanny since my sophomore year of college. And I loved the kids. I was with the same kids from then past when I graduated. But I don't know. I just had a moment or like a period of time to stop and think, why am I doing this? And had some interviews and just totally, and an internship in a marketing company, and just totally felt like I was faking it till I made it kind of thing. And that just started rubbing me the wrong way. And I didn't feel like I could be genuine. And I don't know. I just felt like going to interviews, I was just like totally BSing my whole way through it, Stop to think what I really love and what matters. And to me, the thing that mattered the most was, raising the next generation. And I just felt like an ad that I made or, some minor thing that I could like contribute to the world, like, a commercial was like my big thought in my head. It's like people are going to see that for like 30 seconds. They may buy a pizza or, you're
going to make a pizza commercial.
I don't know. They may buy the product and then forget about it. Like it's not monumental although it feels monumental, like you made a commercial, or something, but it didn't hold the weight that I wanted it to hold. Whereas like raising the next generation and like being in these kids' lives that I was in at the time did feel big and felt like really important. And so that was a big driver for me, just to see the impact I could have on these little kids' lives that weren't even my kids. And I realized that I thought that was the most important thing if I ever had kids. So when we started dating, I think I asked you right in the first.
It was pretty quick.
First month. Because we started dating in Seattle, where people are so ambitious, and I was just not in the same way. Like I wasn't ambitious for career or to start a nonprofit, these big things that people would be talking about. I just felt like if I was able, I would want to be a mom. And so I asked Dan that in the first month, would you be okay if I just stayed home and was a mom? And he surprised me a lot compared to the people I had been around a lot, and was like, yeah, I would love that. And I just felt like so much burden lifted off me. That's just, yay, I get to be who I feel like I was made to be, if possible. And it is possible. And so I am. And that's what I do.
Obviously a thoughtful thing. It wasn't like you didn't get a job and so this was the next best opportunity. This was the pursuit of your heart. It's probably, I don't know, I'm listening to you say all that, and I'm wondering if it's encouraging for you, because the days are long and hard and doesn't feel super purposeful with little kids a lot of the time. But is it encouraging to remember why you set out on this journey in the first place?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
I mean, I reflect on it often because I need to stay focused and to not like just survive the day. I need to reflect like very, very often because it is really, it feels, it's very challenging work.
I'll just throw my 2 cents in there. You're a great mom and super intentional, which is easy to take for granted, I think, but probably shouldn't be. And I'm just curious, like, when you think back on the last 5 years so far that you've been a mom full time, like, what is, I'll limit you to like 2 things that you feel like have significantly changed about you in that time.
Well, I feel like being a mom just like rubs you. Like it's just attention that like I think just like sharpens you, stretches you, whatever analogy you want to use, to like level up, you know? I mean, discipline is like the number one thing that it's changed in me. Like I regularly think about when I was like 20, I left dishes in the sink. I lived in an apartment and I left dishes in the sink. I probably told you this.
Probably.
To the point where the food rotted in the dishes and I just had to throw away the dishes. That's disgusting.
It's super disgusting.
But
I actually don't know if you have said that.
I think about it so often because I do so many dishes and I'm like, what if I lived like that now? You know, like I physically can't live like that. And like, if you get sick as a mom, you don't get to lay on the couch. The house would be a tornado if I just sat there, you know, sick. You can't just leave things, you know? And so I think number one thing for sure is like, we clean our house every day, you know, like the dishes are done every day. We have to wake up every day at a certain time. Like we don't get to sleep in. We don't get to like mess around. Like, you know, I wake up in the middle of the night. Like there's no like late nighters in our house. Like, things just have to be done. And so I feel like with each kid, I just have become, I don't know if I've just become more disciplined probably because out of necessity of survival, you know? And like the first kid, it feels like a lot, you know, because all of a sudden life's not all about you. And like, you can't just go wherever you want to go and do whatever you want to do. And it just increases, I think. And it's nice that it just increases one kid at a time for us.
Mostly, yeah.
So that I can, you know, adjust and like level up. And so I feel like that is definitely something, you know. My other one would probably be, with my first kid, Cohen, I was very afraid. I became very afraid of the world and of people. And like I've always just trusted people to a point, like, or, you know, I'm like, come on into my house. Like, you know, like, let's make you dinner. How many people can we have over? You know, like we've just always had people over. And I think that changed a lot and in my heart. And then I think just the concern of like what's going on in the world and in, you know, our country and that kind of stuff, I think has been much more amplified since, like, I don't think I actually cared at all before having kids. You know, I just like, it was kind of easy to trust God with the world and everything going on. And it probably wasn't as like crazy wild as it is with COVID and all these things. But, with Cohen, I became very afraid. And I think that has led me to have to reflect and meditate on God's word a lot more and just trust God that he's in control, that he is going to take care of us, and that, you know, there's a verse in the Bible that says they always have a light burning in their house, and just that God will provide that light for us in our home. And so, I do not know the reference, but it's about the Exodus. So I just have to, I think, rest in that more than ever as a mom for my kids' safety and everything.
If you enjoy the podcast, please do us a favor and head to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It helps a ton. And there's a reason all the podcasts you listen to ask you to do this. We want to continue to encourage people in the middle of their difficult seasons, and your ratings help boost our podcast visibility and the stories of our guests. Did you pause it and leave a review? If so, thank you. All right. Back to our conversation. Yeah, it's fun to hear you answer that because you've definitely changed in those ways. And the second one, I remember a few moments where, like, to borderline paranoia of fear about the world and people's intentions with Cohen when he was little. And it's certainly less now than it was, but it's never returned to pre-kid phase or mode. And it makes sense. Like, we are responsible for their lives, and it's our job to like look out for and protect them.
And I love them a lot.
Yeah. I thought that was assumed.
It's not just like responsibility. It's like when they hurt, I hurt, you know?
Yeah. I remember it was our pastor in Phoenix who talked about the difference between men and women in that regard of like just how much moms feel their kids' hurts. He said their kid's crying in their bedroom, and he, as the dad, is like, "Oh, it'll be fine. Just give them a few minutes." And the mom was over in the corner, like curled up in a ball, feeling all the pain of the kid.
Sobbing.
Yeah. So it's true in our house as well. But yeah, we do love them a lot. All right, well, let's transition to kind of the central question for the podcast, which you know well, but I ask it every time for context. And the purpose of this podcast is to be an encouragement for people in the middle of difficult seasons. And we've just decided that the best way to do that is to share other people's stories of going through their own hard seasons and the growth that came. And so the question that we ask that gets at that the best, at least that we think anyways, is what's the hardest thing in your life you wouldn't take back?
So I feel like I've been through a decent amount of hard things, like a handful of hard things. And some of them I don't think I would say like I wouldn't take them back. You know, like I would, I could think of a better scenario probably in my own like planning. And obviously I don't know the whole plan of why, like I don't have the answers for why for everything that's happened in my life. Some context. Can I say the other things?
I don't know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Well, like,
of course you can.
Yeah. It's like all the deep things that happen in your life is like super intense to say in like a minute, but,
Go.
So my mom, when I was 19, became paralyzed, which was a hard thing for her. Like, really, I can't even imagine that. And it was hard for me in a different way. And that sounds so selfish. And it was. I was very selfish. And I think that really I was just miserable that maybe life wasn't all about me anymore and that someone needed help, you know? And I was also sad for her. Like it's really hard to watch someone you love, like in such terrible conditions. Yeah, I received that news with no family, like just me and a friend at the hospital. So that was hard. I think just watching her in pain and kind of having to lose myself was hard. I think I could see a different scenario for that one, you know, like I don't really know the why of that. I think there could have been worse things that happened with the way that she lived her life. And so I think that was a gentle thing that happened. It was not gentle for her, but it was not death, you know? And then my mom actually did pass away 4 years after that, which was another really hard thing that I don't know. I definitely don't know the why for that either, you know? Like there's such good things that could have shifted for that not to be the case. But it is the case, and so I'll find that out later on in heaven. Why? But yeah, that was really hard. I mean, she was the closest person in my life ever. That was a moment where I just had to reevaluate, like, what do I believe? Yeah, like a year after my mom died, I found out on Mother's Day the weekend that you and I were going to go hang out with your family for the first time ever, that morning, I found out that my aunt called and she asked my brother and I to sit down. And I thought we were going to be billionaires. So I was like, sure. Like, what do you need to tell us? You know? And it was Mother's Day. So I was like, this must be good news because my mom died a year before. So Mother's Day was already a sad day. So I was like, okay, she must be trying to cheer us up or something, you know? And then she ended up telling us that my dad is not actually biologically related to us. And so that was like, whoa, like how could life get any crazier? That day, Dan and his whole family just witnessed me like sobbing all day long because I was just so confused and like my identity, you know, like there's just a part of your identity in your parents, you know, and like one of them had just died. And so and then my second, who do I look like? How did he lie to me this whole time? Who knows about this, you know, like, and just figuring out all the technical things of like, I thought I knew who I was. And like the most basic part of who I am isn't true. And that I was 24 when I found that out. And like at 24, you think you know who you came from, at the least, you know? And so anyway, that was a crazy thing. But that one, I definitely wouldn't take back because I've just grown so much more appreciation for my dad. I won't tell all of his story, but just choosing to be in our life for that whole time when he wasn't biologically related to us I just felt like, wow, he chose us, which was a really good feeling. And it still is a really good feeling. Like he chose us. And then more than that, realizing that my core identity is shakeable as far as my like biology goes, you know, but like I know who I am in Christ and like I know what he's called me, you know, and that I'm adopted as his child and like all these things that he says about us in scripture, just like that situation just like bumped my belief because I was like, oh, but I have an identity and it doesn't need to be in my parents, you know, or in what I look like or who I look like. Like my identity is I'm a child of God first. And I can relate. I think it's kind of cool because I can relate to Jesus more because Jesus's dad wasn't his biological dad, you know, but he chose him and he raised him. And so I was like, whoa, that's me, you know, I can relate. Anyway, so I think the hardest thing in my life that I wouldn't take back, and I think the hardest thing that, not that happened to me, but that I did, because I think there's like a difference, right? Like,
and there's a difference, but I guess the question's not intended to like create the difference.
Yeah.
It's just in your life what was a hard thing. And it could be,
that's true.
It could be the thing that you set in motion. Or it could be something that you just had to like endure because it happened to you. I don't think it matters. Like the season's hard regardless.
So a little backstory to the hardest thing. And I think for me, it was the hardest thing I ever did. Like I made a choice to do it. That was really, really hard. I was insecure growing up, just insecure. I don't know. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be loved, you know, like most people do, but I think to an annoying level. It didn't get me good places. So I just like boys were like my thing, you know, like from preschool, I had a boyfriend. Like I had a picture of me and my boyfriend Jamie in preschool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
I was just the next one on the list.
No, not at all. Yeah. Like I just dated people. And I think when I got to high school, I had gone to a Christian school, and then for 10th grade, I went to a public school and was pretty insecure. I don't know. I just wanted to be popular, I think is what I wanted. That was like my main goal in high school was like be popular. And so I chose like guys I dated based on that. And so, you know, my first boyfriend, I dated him like 2.5 years or something. And then my second boyfriend was like, I started dating him while I was on a break with my last boyfriend. Same with the third. And so that was over like a course of 7 years that I dated these 3 guys. And I think this is common, and I know this is common based on all the girls I talk to. But it's common to like, you like are single, but you're not really single. You like have someone in your pocket, you know, like you have someone that you can talk to and text. Like you can't actually be like, I just couldn't actually be single. Like I couldn't not know who was gonna like affirm me, give me my worth, tell me I'm awesome, you know, those kinds of things. Like just be the person for me. Like I had a hard time. I had a very difficult time. It was impossible because I never did it. Being alone and being able to just like know my worth and know who I am by myself. And so I ended up dating a guy like my sophomore year of college or something like that. And we were together 3 years, and just like a lot of bad things happened in that relationship. Like I went to jail, he went to jail. Like it was pretty intense.
Fireworks.
Yeah, lots of things. And we like had this relationship which I think a lot of people can also relate to this, but like where we loved each other and hated each other. Like we were miserable without each other, but like tried to destroy each other because we didn't want the other person to like have control in the relationship. You know, like you don't want to be vulnerable because you didn't actually know if they were going to stay. So you had to like have some level of control. So if you like felt like they were going to leave, you'd like switch, you know, and like play hard to get. And like, I don't know, it's just this silly game because I just really didn't know what love was. And he was just the thing that gave me worth. That relationship, I came to the Lord during that relationship, you know, broke it off because it wasn't what I felt the Lord's best was for me. And, you know, got back together and then broke it off and then got back together. I think it was like 8 times. I think the hardest thing for me and the best decision I've ever made in my whole entire life, besides Christ, was ending that relationship with nothing to go to. Like that was a really vulnerable thing for me to do. And it was a really painful thing for me to do because he was like a nice guy, like on paper, you know, obviously not all the time. But well, what it really was is I didn't think I would ever get any better. Like I didn't think I deserved better. I didn't think I was valuable enough to get better than him. And, you know, we had a history and I was attracted to him and all these things that I thought were like the basis of a relationship, you know, like you're attracted to someone, they're attracted to you, you start dating. That's what I thought, you know, I thought that was it. So taking all those things and going, even with all these things, like it's a no. And I'm going to actually end this relationship with nothing in front of me. But I had confidence and it was really, really hard. It was like this cool mesh of like, I know who I am, like deciding I know who I was and what I was worth, and that I was totally okay if no one ever came, you know, because I trusted that person was not God's best for me. And it was not who God wanted me to be with. And that was just very clear. And so I just made that decision, like, and I cried like for a month and a half, like every night, and listened to worship music in my bed crying all the time. But yeah, I would say I wouldn't take it back. So I like spent the next year after that just like figuring out what I like, who I am, like what I like without a guy telling me what I should like, or without me trying to impress a person, what I enjoy doing, what I believe. For a year, I just was by myself figuring that out. And I had friends, obviously, who ended up being like my supporters and my people who just kept me on the right path. Accountability, like just cared so much that I just was strong in this and knew what I really wanted, because there's like a what you want and then there's like what you really want, you know? And a lot of people settle for the first one, what you want in the moment. And I had it that year. And in that year, I met you. I think it was like 9 months later or something. And then I was like able to make wise decisions. Like, I'm not going to mess around again and go through this whole thing where I'm like, just because I also figured out like who I wanted to date and like what actually mattered to me in a person. Not just like, oh, I'm attracted to you and you're attracted to me, but like what actually matters, and being able to choose that, because I didn't actually need anyone, because I did trust that I didn't have to have someone, because I felt like I could just have God forever if that was his plan.
Well, I will say that I don't think I would have thought that was going to be your answer.
Really?
No, I would have thought that like your mom dying was going to be the hardest thing in your life. And maybe it is the hardest thing, but it's something you would take back. So, which is why it's not your answer. But that's what I was thinking about. And, it's hard for me to relate to the like dependence part of that, I think, with that guy. But it's certainly a common thing. And I'm curious if you can, like, for somebody who's maybe in that space, like, talk about the mental like battle that goes on in your head because on the outside looking in, like hearing you talk about it, this time and before, it's like, well, what was so hard about it? It was clearly terrible, Like, why could you not walk away from it? So, like, what is the mental tug of war that happens or happened in your mind that, like, made that not a rational choice, basically?
Well, yeah, it's not, like, objective. It's not without emotion and attachment and jealousy and all the things that come with, like, letting someone go, I think, right? Like, letting them go means, like, they go to someone else, most likely. And that can tear at your worth if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you're worth. I think that can, just further that. And then a lot of people will, and myself included for a long time, would just go to another person because I needed that worth, like all of a sudden I'm like desperate again because they're with someone and a lot of times flaunting it, right? Then I need someone to tell, I want to show that I'm worth it, but that actually just like screams insecurity. And I didn't see that when I was in it. I saw, that gave me value. But yeah, I don't know if someone was in that right now, at least for myself, that's what it was, like you're letting someone go and you don't actually know if there's someone better. And do I want to be alone the rest of my life? And can I handle that? And I think that question, do I want to be alone the rest of my life? I just felt like, I think in it, maybe not. But at this point, when I hear that, I'm like, you don't have to be alone the rest of your life. You just have to be alone today. Can you do today? Like, can you do today without reaching out in desperation for worth and value? Can you do today just like figuring out who you are? Honestly, if you don't have Jesus and you're listening to this, like, and you're in that, like, I am just going to put a plug because, God changed my whole life. Gave me purpose, gave me direction, gave me worth, identity. Definition, though, like, I all of a sudden had, like, I could name it because I knew it, and I don't think that comes from, like, just thinking it and, like, trying to believe something. I think God, like, met me and spoke those things to me, Like, I had that experience, which was really what freed me, like, from this trap of desperation and need for a man's love and affection and approval. That was just freedom. And I'll just say, like, the freedom came when I realized that I was forgiven of everything I'd done. And for a long time, I thought, I have to get to a certain point to be saved, to be free, to be forgiven. I had to, first I had to get rid of this guy, or first I had to stop drinking, or first I had to stop stealing, or, whatever I was doing. But the guy one was a really big one. Like, first I had to stop, like, sleeping with people. And I thought that if I did that, then I could pray. Then maybe God would forgive me. But that isn't how the gospel works. Like, the Bible says in Romans 5, while you were still sinners, Christ died for you. Like, in your sin, he wants you. And he'll figure that out with you. And he did. And so when I was encountered with that grace of just complete cleansingness, when I felt my lowest and my, least valuable and my most shameful, when I was encountered with that grace and actually started to understand it, I felt free. Like, I could talk to God, like I could listen to his direction without, like, it's not condemnation. It's like direction. It's like advice from someone who loves you, And so all of a sudden I didn't feel condemned anymore. And I felt like guided and like counseled. And so that is what gave me the ability, I think, to put those wrestlings of my flesh and my soul aside and trust that, like, I have a direction I'm going and I don't need a man to make that happen. I think you have to have a foundation of something stronger to get free of something so strong as a person. Like, people are such a strong tie and such a strong bond that if you don't have something stronger than that you're going for, you will always fall back to, like, what's, feels the best. And it really feels good to be loved and to be wanted.
The other piece of that, like, you said, I don't have to worry about, will I find somebody or be alone the rest of my life? Mm-hmm. You're 23, 24 years old. Like, that's a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, when fear kicks in, when you're like unsure, it's unknown, you don't know the path that's in front of you. You just know that the path you've been on is the wrong path. Like, that uncertainty, unknown, what our mind does is, like, extrapolate it out. Like, mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, this is forever, instead of just making the decision for the moment. Mm-hmm. And it is really powerful to just go, well, can I do it today? Because then you just ask it again the next day. Mm-hmm. The whole phrasing of the question, of this podcast and the concept is like, and a lot of people who have been on this podcast have said, like, it's a season. It isn't forever. Nothing is forever. But it's so hard when fear kicks in or that, like, uncertainty is present to believe that that's true. Sometimes, to tie in what you were saying also in the advice side of, like, needing something greater, like, that's the gift of the Lord, is, like, he provides the perspective that we can't, like, conjure up on our own a lot of the time in a way that nobody else can, able to, like, give us what we need when we need it. And I think it's hard for us to even know what to ask for in those moments too, because it's so unknown and uncertain. But, like, God's, like, already ahead of us.
Yeah, and I think with the one day at a time thing too, like, that was really real for me. And I think I fell back into those moments of desperation a lot, more than a handful of times. And I think the gospel, which is the grace I was talking about, that I'm covered and forgiven and I don't have to do anything for that, allowed me then the next day to start over again. Like, okay, I totally fell back with that person or into bad habits a lot. And being able to get up again, also just, like, God totally gave me friends that, like, would answer the call when I called with, like, crying, like, I did it again. And they would be like, get up again. Like, you're good. You're forgiven. And they would just speak that over me. Like, okay, you need to get a little help with that alcohol stuff, but, like, you're forgiven. And that helped me every day to be like, when I fell, it's like, how quick can I get up? How quick can I, and I think it's cool because when you're intentional in that way and you're thinking, like, you have a purpose and you have direction and then you fall, but you still have that purpose and direction. In my situation, I got up quicker every time. It's like, okay, I'm back with the guy for a month. And then the next time I'm back with him for a week. And I'm like, wait, I didn't want this. And then I'm back with him for a weekend. And I'm like, wait, I didn't want this. And then a day. And I didn't want this, you know? And able to just like slowly weed that out and then be like wanting to call him and be like, no, I don't want this, you know? And having people, I had people, like I'd already said, but like I had one friend who was like, two friends who were willing to, if I wanted to call him, I would have to call them first. And one friend, I called her and I was like, I actually don't care what you're going to say. I'm going to call him when we get off the phone. I know I have to call you or else I'm lying to you. And she prayed for me and she read scripture to me. And I was like, that's really cool. I'm going to call him. Bye. And I got off the phone and was like, I'm not going to call him, you know? And it just changed. And that was a big moment, like never calling him again, never ever talking to him again. Like from that moment on, because I was like, that was the hardest night to not call him, and I didn't call him. And that took support, obviously, but I think those people were placed in my life for that support. So yeah, it's not without falling is what I was trying to say. But it's can I do it today? And a lot of days we can. And then it's like you get so far, you're like, why would I mess this up? You know, I don't want to ruin this.
So I want to ask lots more questions, but I think for this episode, because you know what's cool is that we're married, so we could have you come back another time. Anyways, I'm actually really curious how you're going to answer this question, because I don't know. Ask everybody at the end, what's a hard thing that you're in the middle of right now?
So obviously, I already talked about just like the need to reflect on my purpose as a mom, because I think this season is very stretching. And like just going outside is difficult, especially when there's snow, because it's like 4 kids to get ready and all of them have different naps and they all need to be fed before we leave. And it's just a lot of work. So that's a difficult thing. I think the other thing I was thinking is piano, learning piano, because that it's just like a mental game. Like I have to practice. Anyone who is learning something new understands that it's just like, I feel like I've hit a little bit of a groove now, but in the beginning, like the first year that I've been doing it, I don't want to play. It sounds bad, you know? It's like I was thinking discipline is doing something you don't want to do because you like set out to do it. And I don't know, but I was like, whoa. So like when I don't want to do it, I still should do it, which maybe everyone's like, yeah, duh. But like, I'm sure there are certain things that I don't want to do and I do, but then there's certain things that like I really don't want to do. And it's like, I have to do those because I set out to do it, you know? And just, I think it helps me knowing I will get better and like the end goal, you know? I mean, it's just challenging. It's silly, but it's challenging to sit and do something that doesn't feel good for the purpose of maybe in 2 years I'll sound better.
Yeah, and there's a lot of resistance. And I think you've hit a groove now because some of that resistance has gone away. So like there's a piano that sounds good that's like 5 feet from where you spend most of your time, right? And there's headphones, so people don't have to like hear you mess up. So there's no like public shaming happening that wasn't there before, but you know,
oh yeah,
maybe sense could possibly be there. And some of the failures of not knowing where keys were or what the notes are and rhythms and have kind of fallen away. So it's just all that resistance that was faced. Some of it you've had to like engineer away, and some of it just comes with time and experience and practice. But none of it would have gone away on its own. Like it took some like restructuring the way you did it, and it took some just persistence, right, to get there. And it, you know, you said it's been a year. You're infinitely better than you were. And as you were talking, I was like, it would have been cool if you had like filmed yourself, I don't know, once a month and like had the progression, because you would really be able to tell how much better you've gotten. But you could do that for a year too, I guess. So anyways, yeah, hard things. And that's like self-inflicted a little bit, the piano one anyways. Kids kind of self-inflicted. Anyways, if people want to connect with you, like maybe something you said really resonated with them, is there a way for them to like ask more questions or connect with you? Creepy ways.
I mean, I have an email address, but I don't have social media. No Instagram, no Facebook.
I already knew that. I thought maybe you would offer up a suggestion. So I will just say that you can email the podcast, and being her husband, I have a way to get it to her. So you can email the podcast, which if you want to, that's contact@elitesrs.com, or and I'll drop that in the show notes as well, so that you don't have to remember that necessarily. And feel free to reach out if you've got questions or things you just want to follow up on. Rach, super fun to do this. We've been talking about it for, I think, as long as the podcast has been in existence. So like almost 8 months now or so. And we finally did it. How'd it feel?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Do Hard Things podcast by Elite SRS. We hope you are encouraged today and have a newfound hope to persevere. Be sure to subscribe for more great episodes and conversations. And if you ever want to watch an episode, check out our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/elitesrs. Have a blessed day.